fun. Fantastic. Wow.
That was interesting.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Reyes. Thank you so much for being here on Bubbler Media with me. And this is Inspiring Adventures. I'm a little shaken because we had some technical difficulties. What's a new show on a new network with a new guest without a little technical difficulty? But I'm very excited to introduce you to Manna Ko. She is the author of Made for More. And I'm not going to wait another second. I'll just bring her in and we'll get to know her together. So welcome, Manna.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you can hear me.
I can finally hear you.
Good. Okay, that's great. And I can hear you too. I'm actually going to turn my volume up a little bit so I can hear you better. But if we do have an echo, I'll throw my headphones on. But at least we can hear each other. And
yes.
Well, welcome to Ms. Meliz, That's My World, and Inspiring Adventures, and the Bubbler Media Network. That's new. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So, Manna,
yes,
this is a huge book.
I know.
Why don't you take a moment? And thank you so much again for refreshing and getting going. Tell us about yourself. Tell me about what inspired you to write the book and what you did with it. I'll give you the screen.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to write the book, and I never thought I really would tell my story. But it actually goes way back to when I was 14 years old. And I'll spare you the details here, but I'm just going to say it. I was told, I felt I had an encounter with God because I was crying out to him. I said, God, this is very bad. Everything in my life was just very, very bad. And I said, this is not good. This is not what I expected. And this is not what childhood should be like.
Oh.
And he said, in no uncertain terms, I know, but one day your story will be told to millions and millions of people, and you will help so many of them. And I just thought that was a very odd thing to hear. But as a 14-year-old without a lot of experience about God, I just thought maybe this was just my imagination. But then every decade, somebody somewhere at some point in time said to me, Manna, have you ever journaled this? Have you ever told anybody this? And to the point where in my 40s, as I was being interviewed to be a keynote speaker for a startup company, as we were discussing his company and the message he wanted me to bring and what he wanted to accomplish in that presentation, he started asking me more and more questions about myself. Well, again, very long story short, he ended up wanting to publish my book, fund it, and even do all the things needed to do it, including marketing, but he also wanted the rights for it. So I said no, because by the time I was in my 40s, I had a very deep stirring in my heart that one day I would tell my story. But I thought it would be when I would be in my 80s, when I felt like I had done something in my life. But as it turned out, when I turned 50, I felt that stirring again in my spirit. And I heard, it's time. And I knew it was God. And I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I've come finally to a place of rest and peace. And I said, I don't want to go back. And he said, no, it's time. So I go and I argue with God for about 2 years. And I think the purest definition of misery is to run away from your calling. And that's when you will know misery the most, is when you run away from your calling. So I had one last conversation, I remember, in the kitchen saying, no, I'm not going to do this. And I heard again, Manna, it's not about you. And when I heard those words, I mean, there was really no rebuttal. And I said, okay, fine. So I picked up my laptop and I started writing. And just so you know, it was about 1,000 pages by the time I got done. And I had 4 editors look at it. I had 50 beta readers read it, the first 8 chapters, because I wanted to make sure, am I crazy? Is there a story here? Am I making this up? And everybody said, you need to get this out there as fast as possible. And all the editors asked me, have I ever written a novel like this before? Have I ever done anything this epic? And I said, no. And they said it was so well written, and all they really were going to do was proofread it. And they said, what about the stories? And I said, we can cut back some. So I cut back quite a bit. And the rest is photographs and whatever. So it's roughly 575 pages plus, front matter, back matter, all the stuff. But they said, the editors said to me, Manna, don't worry about the count, the page count. Typically it's 500 pages for a novel. And just tell your story well. So I said, okay, I'll just get to work on really telling the story well. And right now it's in 10 countries. Many, 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 many people have read it. And for that daunting size, you would never imagine, but one person has read it in 27 hours or 29 hours. Somebody else has read it in 48 hours. And many people have read it within a week and many more within the month. And I'm just grateful. Most people have said they just can't put it down. And it's a story that they can get very involved in. They can get very engaged in. So
well, hearing your voice now, it's like hearing you tell a story. You're so compelling. I didn't even want to come into the screen because I just want to continue listening to your tone and you tell. So tell us, who's everyone watching now, what started you, where you came from. I mean, from a stolen childhood to a life of joy. That's a big journey.
It's a big journey.
Can you just share with us your first roots, the stolen childhood? Who is this little girl?
Oh, that little girl is me. And that was, I think I was 3 years old. And we had just started in Hong Kong. You start school very, very early. And because the competition is so great to get ahead. So I started school at 3 years old, and it was a prep school. And we learned Cantonese and English at the same time, but very basic English. And then I was brought up with Mandarin as well. Everything was fine because, I shouldn't say that. I was brought up by my maternal grandparents, which was the fine part.
Okay.
But when we suddenly had to leave and move to Canada, that's when everything started to change. And I didn't know I was being taken away from my grandparents. So that was brutal. So they were my caretakers. They were my life. They were everything. And I knew who my parents were. I just didn't have a whole lot of experience with them. I would be taken to them. I would see them on weekends. I was close to my dad. I was close to my brother, who actually lived with my father and my mother at the time. But I did not. So there were always questions. What was it about me that was so different or unusual that I would not live with my parents? But 14 months later, when my brother was born, he was living with my parents. He wasn't given to grandparents to take care of. So there were a lot of questions. And so I endured a lot of harsh situations. I was abused by my stepfather. I was abused emotionally by my mother, and to some degree physically. There was abandonment, there was neglect. We were left alone for many days without care. I learned to cook on a gas stove at the age of 7. I took care of my little brother, who I love and adore. Still to this day, we're the best of friends. And so I cared for him even at a very young age. And we did have a housekeeper for a while, but that's all part of the story as well, and how she left or was fired. But yeah.
So you were a little person. Just here's, you were a baby and then you were a person. Yeah. Dealing with things that some people have a hard time dealing with even now.
Yes. And
so
I applied for a job when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I ran away from home, and I was determined to get a job and to take care of my brother and our dog, Lucky. And as far as I was concerned, there was nothing wrong with me asking the paint store owner, and then the toy store owner, and then the five and dime store owner, and the ice cream parlor.
Still in Hong Kong, or were you in?
Oh no, this now is in Canada. This is in Vancouver, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea that was something odd to do. I think because I had grown up so quickly, I knew how to care for my brother. I knew how to care for my dog. And as far as I was concerned, I would get a job. I would find a place to live. I could feed my brother and me, and I just would do whatever it took to get out of that crazy situation. So
forgive me, because as I told you when I spoke to you, I wanted to talk to you first before I dug into this book. I'm going on vacation, starts tomorrow, and this is what I've been reading. So, so when did you start hearing this voice that was God talking to you? Did you hear it then?
I heard it when I was not even 2 years old.
Okay.
And what's interesting is I wasn't really brought up talking about God. We were a Christian family per se, and I don't remember going to church. I don't remember conversations about God. I don't remember having traditions, your typical traditions, Christian traditions at home. Mm-hmm. But I remember being a very little girl and crawling to this large picture window that at my grandmother's home that was basically from the floor up. And I would just lean against the patio door, the picture window door, and I would overlook Lion Rock Mountain that looked like, and they call it Lion Rock because it looked like a lion in repose, like a lion lying down. And very similar to the banner photo that I have on my Facebook page. Okay. And so I remember thinking, God must live there, because it was so majestic. It was so noble, and it was so powerful. And all I wanted to do was be with God. And I would hear messages. I would hear things, and I would know what would happen in certain times before even adults did. And so some people would call me an intuitive. Some people would call me psychic on the one side. And in the Christian world, it would be called prophetic,
Are you an intuitive?
I would say I would have the communicative gifts. So they would be words of knowledge, words of wisdom, and words of prophecy. So I can see things and understand things about a person's past. I can see their giftings for their future. And I can see words, I would call it just words of wisdom or insight that could help them in their journey in the day. Reason I'm able to see a lot in photographs. People have tested me with that to see whether or not I was making it up. And it's an awkward conversation sometimes, because I could tell whether the spirit of death was on somebody or if they had passed. But I didn't know if they knew they were going to pass, because sometimes timing isn't quite accurate. So I've been tested that way. So it's a delicate situation to say, has this person passed when they're still alive, and you're trying to work on something, or if there's tendencies for when they're depressed and I know they've been thinking about suicide. Those are very difficult conversations, but in my counseling practice, it was very easy to use that to draw questions out and intercept tragedies. So, yeah.
Do you sense it, or are there signals that people give off, or do you just get a sense from a person with, specifically with either suicidal thoughts or the death?
Yeah, I believe God would give me insights for that. It's definitely something that I would sense. So, yeah.
I can relate to that. I don't think I've ever shared this with anybody, but I've had a couple of times with children. I've had a sense about a child, and in my mind just heard a voice thinking, this child is going to be ill, or this child is not going to be an adult. And
yeah, that's not easy. I saw somebody comment, and you're right. You're right. I think her name is Cindy. It isn't easy. It's a very delicate and sensitive responsibility, because you have then the responsibility to speak to it, and to speak to it in a way that isn't alarming or frightening, or, and you don't know where that person is at either, or if they're in contact with the person in question. So yeah, it's not easy.
And when you first get a message like that, or for me, I didn't know that was what it was. I thought it was, well, why would I think that? That's a terrible thing to think. And then when it happened later, I thought, well, next time if I ever get a message like that, I need to do something, or, how can I, what can you do, and so heavy thinking right now, but you've got me thinking, and my feeling is always that when you have a knowledge, to turn it into something good and put positive out, because I feel responsible for making more positivity in the world. So that's what I do.
So, well, and for me, it would be prayer. If we can pray about it, we get more direction, we get more insight. And that would.
So let me ask you this. At that time, when you're standing there and you're looking out the window and you're seeing God and you're feeling about God, did you turn to Christianity? Did you become religious, or do you just
I was very confused. I didn't know. I would have these conversations with God, but I didn't have direct training, or, for lack of a better term, apprenticeship or discipling, mentoring. I had none of that, because things got very crazy. And so my mother and father ended up getting divorced, and then craziness started happening with my stepdad, who wasn't my stepdad yet, but soon to be. And so there wasn't an opportunity to go to church, or, this is the 60s. You don't talk about things like that. And in Canada, you definitely didn't talk about things like that. It was, very conservative, very provincial, and there was no discussion, lest you bring shame onto the family. And then you add the cultural influence of being Asian, Chinese. You definitely did not bring shame to the family, because it was always about honor. It was about giving face to your elders. And that caused a lot of problems for me, because I didn't want to show disrespect. I didn't want to look like I was challenging authority figures. And so there was no one to reach out to, and church was very far away for us to go. It wasn't until much, much later that my father, when I got to see him again, very long story, that he started taking us to church. But I still didn't get the training until much, much later. And then I explored with many different faiths. I went down every avenue, because I knew there was something bigger than what I was seeing. I knew there was something bigger than the situations. I knew there was something bigger than what I was reading. I knew there was more. And there was no way that in all of this creation, for me, that this could have been an accident. So and from all my experiences, I knew there was a God. I just needed to find the right one, so to speak. So that took me a very circuitous journey, hence the many pages, because I think if I found it out right the first time, I might have cut down 300 pages. But anyways.
And the knowledge, the things that you learned, but I'm sure that all this is something that will help other people. And that's probably what you've heard, that people, what did the people who read it so fast and couldn't put it down say to you?
Well, the first thing is, thank you for being so brave. And I didn't think of it as bravery so much as it is, if I have gone through so many crazy things. Many of the things I brought upon myself, and I share that in the book many times. This was not a book where I blamed anybody. I wanted to vilify anybody. It was not a book about being a victim. It was a book about, hey, things happen. Sometimes things are done to us, and there are inexplicable things that we cannot understand. Why do these things happen to a little girl? Where was my mother? Where was an authority figure? Where was God? Where is all these things? And so I wrote these stories, and it was very clear to me which ones to tell, which ones not to tell, because it addresses so many different issues that I think every woman and every child and every man can relate to. And I have had, actually, interestingly, from what the response I've had, about 30, 35, maybe even 40% of the readers are men. And the men are saying to me, oh my goodness, thank you for sharing this. I now understand my mother. I now understand my sister. I now understand the neighbor. I now understand my grandmother. And this is so important right now, because in a time of blended marriages, blended families, the men are finally saying, I need to know who's in my house. I need to know who's speaking into the lives of my children. Who is this uncle that got married? Like it's a third marriage, it's a second marriage. Who are these people that's coming into family meetings, family gatherings, family events? Who's babysitting whom? And it's a conversation that needs to be had. And like I said in the preface, these are not easy conversations to be had, but we are so easily whitewashing or dismissing the abuse or whatever, because we're so desensitized to it. We hear it all the time, but these are not things to be desensitized to. And I just had a conversation with a very powerful young man today who said it just came out in their family that his sister was molested. And then it just came out that many siblings or many women in the family have had that experience. And now, the healing begins. But if we don't have that conversation, it's always hidden. But like a beach ball that's trying to be suppressed in a pool, all your energy goes into trying to hold this beach ball down, but you're not actually enjoying the pool. You're not enjoying the rest, or you're not enjoying the play. You're not enjoying why you're in the pool. All your energy
comes up with that pressure.
Yes. And it hits you in the head, or it hurts somebody. And so, these things need to be spoken. These things need to be addressed. But like I said, it's not to vilify anyone as it is to, hey, these things are happening. What can we do? How can we overcome? What are the conversations that need to be had? What are the groups? What is the support system? What is the answer? How can we help one another? And how can we better understand each other? Where can we have grace for one another? If we understand now that the person who was abused is behaving in this way because they had no other outlet, they had no other recourse, they had no other language. You think about a child, they don't have language for this. So do they retreat? Do they become depressed? Do they overeat? Do they hide? What destructive patterns do they do? So in a way to accommodate and understand this madness. So, because they also don't want to bring shame. They may not feel safe. They don't want to be isolated. They don't want to be labeled. So there's a lot in this so that people can identify. So to answer your question, a lot of people are saying, thank you for telling your story, because 1, I don't feel alone. 2, I don't feel there's something wrong with me. 3, I feel like I now have the courage to ask for help. And 4, I want to help my family. I don't, and then movement. There's forward movement instead of regression, instead of oppression, instead of hiding and isolation. There's opportunity now to come forward in their beauty, in their greatness. And this isn't just for girls. The little boys are abused. And so, we're just having conversations that's more.
What I love is
constructive.
that you say with grace, and you are, I knew, that it took courage to tell, every bit of your story. And I just had been thinking about how courageous you are, but in hearing hearing the energy that you're giving out and seeing the comments, it's a little overwhelming, but it's amazing because it's resonating so much. And I hear what you're saying, and I feel so good because you don't put blame or even give any discourse as far as, because surely people who do things that are wrong, I'm not giving any explanation, but it's beyond understanding sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you're only just going from what you know and how you handled it and what
right,
happened with you, and you're sharing, and and you're saying that's how you handled it.
Right. Exactly. My perspective may not be somebody else's perspective, and my avenue and my healing may not be somebody else's, but I'm making an offering. I'm making an offering that if this can help, if it doesn't help, that's fine. Close the book, throw it away, use it as a door stopper, use it as kindling. It's okay. But for others, maybe that's one part of the answer. Maybe it's a big part of the answer. Maybe it's the seed that will help them discover other things that could help them find other roots that can help them bring out better fruit, because their fruit right now might be very bitter fruit. It might be a bitter harvest, but if they can find a way to reframe it, to see things as, to have insight, to have something else as a perspective, maybe they can dig up that plant and replant into something else that can be more fruitful in their lives. Because there's no point in living in the past. There's no point in blaming. Those people have moved on. They're doing their own thing. We have to move on too, but how can we move on? And how can we do it in a way that doesn't continue to defile others? Because the defilement already happened in the past. It happened. We can't do anything about it. But if we carry it with bitterness, with anger, with jealousy, with rage, with all sorts of retribution ideas, it doesn't help anybody. And so if nothing else, I would still be a perpetrator with those lingering tentacles. But if I can heal and grow and then help others overcome, then we break the pattern. Then we stop that madness, and we can help others change a whole family dynamic and change a legacy for families to come. They don't have to live with that.
I think you answered a question that I had in my head. You literally went on to what, how had writing the book or putting this out there changed you yourself for the better?
Yeah.
And how did it heal you?
Well, very frankly, there was very little joy in writing this book because I had to go back and then I had to write it. Not only did I have to go back and describe the story, I had to write it in a way that would be even, dare I say, eloquent or entertaining or redemptive. There were so many things about this that I had to do, but not just once. I had to rewrite this 12, 13, 14 times and then go through the edits again. So these are just not the edits. These are the rewrites. And then we had to go, editing and making it in a way that could be very palatable and easy for the reader to enjoy, and to dig the gold out of, and to find the gold within themselves. I just saw a comment from a very dear friend, Elisa, and she does so much with marriages. And one of the things that's so powerful about this book and the book that she wrote is, how do you heal in relationship? Because unless you're healed, you bring that same thing to your marriage, to your families, to your friendships, to work. You just keep bringing it. So that's the joy for me in writing this, was knowing the end result. Was not in the process, because I felt like God really did heal me before. I had done so much work. I had seen, I don't know how many counselors. I had done so many therapeutic workshops, and I'd done the whole gamut. Mm-hmm. But the gift for me in writing this was when a very powerful mentor said to me, Manna, when you write this, you think about the little girl in Cambodia. You think about the teenager in Arkansas. You think about the boy in D.C., Washington, D.C. You think about the children in Africa. You think about the lost in the Ukraine. You think about the orphanage in China. Mm-hmm. And when he said that to me, it was all I needed. Because, and I think that's the answer for so many of us, is we have to stop thinking about ourselves. This is not about me. This is not, even for what you do, even though your name is on it, your gift is to platform others. Your gift is to share the message of hope and possibility and opportunity and growth and healing and joy and dreams of other people who will then pass it down the line. And that's the whole point of all of this. It's never about us. Although we will be the vessel that will be used, it is never about us. We're to be used, but it's all for a greater purpose. So for me, the joy, to answer your question, the healing, the gift is in knowing who was going to read this book. Who is going to be healed from it? What other organizations, workplaces, ministries, groups that could be helped by doing this? So that was my joy. That's amazing. You're incredible. Thank you so much for being here. We have more time to talk about more things. I'm going to set it aside. But we'll come back to this because there's so much more, and it's amazing. What you've written other books, Manna, mm-hmm. And are you writing anything else now? Or you have anything else? I wrote 3 books that were very specific for a project, and they were basically cookbooks. and then I wrote some, devotional books. Feeding from some friends. And feeding our 4-legged families. Yes, and friends. And so those were cookbooks, and they were project specific. And one was just for fun. The others are kind of like a promise book from A to Z. The different things that you can call on so that when you're stuck, when you just don't know what to do, you go to the letter A, and there's some verses there to help you. A, say for acceptance, B for boldness, C for courage, and so on and so on. And then I wrote a journal that goes with this book. Mm-hmm. And then I have a children's book series. There's 10 of them. And 3 I've just finished, and I just got the illustrations for the first one. I hope to have 1 or 2 out by the end of this year. But another fun book that I'm writing is a historical romance book. It's actually a prequel. So it's not a sequel to me, but it's a prequel. So it's about my 5th great-grandfather, who is Sir Francis Richard Caldwell. And he is a British noble that went from England. He was a barrister that went to do missionary work in China and met my 5th great-grandmother. And so there was a lot of racism and different things. Yeah, I love that. So it's a fictional novel based on the true life story. Yeah. So it'll be a romance novel about my 5th great-grandfather, who people have said, and there's documentation to this, that he is a descendant of Napoleon. So it could be very fun. It's just playful. There's be some poetic license to it, but because it's based on the true life story, but it's not a biography of him. Yeah. So that sounds really neat. Yeah, so you're writing this now? You're working on this now? I have the outline for it, and it's just been put aside for now as I finish up a few marketing things. We're rebranding, working on the website. So there's a few things that we're working on behind the scenes, and then, but I will get to that hopefully by the end of the year.
That's really neat. Well, tell me about my spiritual first aid kit for women and my spiritual first aid kit for men. That sounds interesting too.
Yeah, so that's the ABC book.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs a spiritual first aid kit.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It's kind of like a spiritual toolkit. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, some kind of guide.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it's faith-based, and so there's some words, some prose, some proverbs, some different things that just like, oh, there's really good wisdom in that for me. And so, so that's what that is. Yeah.
So neat. So, one of the things that I feel like our paths have crossed, I don't know if it was Blab or Facebook or from, social media or blogging, or maybe it was Connect Her. I'm not really sure, but I feel like you've been around and we have friends in common and stuff. But I feel like, I don't know, I just started seeing you and I felt I need to know her. And as soon as I reached out to you and I got an email, about your book, and you just were so warm and inviting, and I love that about you. And it just, do you have that with everybody, or do you I just feel like you're just so warm. And then when we spoke today, I just felt so familiar with you. And I don't know, maybe you're kindred spirit kind of, but I find that a lot in what I call the spiritual community, or people who have that inspiration, or just like open, I think, to meeting people. So, I don't know if that's a question, or just, do you get that sense about people? You're just kind of open to telling your story, and if they're ready to receive it, it's special, isn't it?
It is. And, I think I'm very blessed. I have a childlike faith and a childlike heart. In some ways, I feel I'm very gullible, even though I've seen so much of life. But I'm grateful for that part of innocence. I'm grateful that I'm not that hard-hearted. And I do receive people on a clean slate. I feel everybody is just love. They're just a sack of love. That's where my baseline is for everyone. And it's from there whether we ratchet up or we ratchet down, depending on how people are. So everybody starts with, you are just a wonderful bag of love and hugs and kisses. And I know that sounds corny. And I know that people have said on my Facebook, you couldn't possibly do this. And they've been very actually, cutting. And I've just said, I am. But with people that are harder, I have to hold back. So that's when discernment comes. That's when wisdom comes, and you don't give so much of yourself. And there is a time to say no. It's unfortunate, but I do have to say no to some people, either verbally, energetically, physically, in contact, and so on. And then there's also timing. Sometimes it's a season where we're just not going to travel the same path. I've often given the example, sometimes my assignment is to go to Seattle and your assignment is to go to Atlanta. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be friends. It's just we have different assignments. And maybe our assignments will come back. Yeah. And it's not bad and it's not good, or it's just different. But people have to understand friendships just have different assignments sometimes, and we just can't judge each other because we have different assignments. And so
I'm trying to get my friends to understand that they don't have to apologize to me. I don't think friends need to say they're sorry. It's like if you're friends, that kind of overrides the whole, I'm sorry I didn't do whatever. It's like, just tell me you didn't do it. That's okay, whatever. A friend of mine just told me, I'm sorry we didn't get together that time and that didn't work out, but I was this. And I'm like, we don't have to say you're sorry. Let's just get together another time. We're friends. It's okay. It's colleagues or business relationships or people that you want to be professional with, that you wouldn't want that to happen, but because we're friends, I understand. I know what you're going through. We're going through it together. So I'm here for you. I'm the one rooting for you. So, I understand that sorry is kind of just a word we throw out there, and she's just saying, she's just wish that didn't happen. That's okay. We just go on. I try to turn it around, and it's all good. But I'm like that. It's just, I'm really easy on those people because I know that they care, but I love that we're, assignment, and it's an assignment to be someplace else. That makes a lot of sense to me. I like that a lot. So that's really good. And sometimes we all circle back and we're together again. So yeah, I like that. That makes sense. I don't know.
Well, what's wonderful, what I'm hearing from you is that you just give people a lot of grace. And what's so nice is that grace, hang on, I'm getting double.
Oh, you get less feedback?
Yeah.
There's nothing you could do about it. Just kind of.
Yeah. Okay, so forgive me. I've got to focus. So it's fine that you give people grace. It's wonderful. Sorry, this is just so loud.
It's weird. You could turn off your other windows, maybe. Okay.
Do
you only get it when you talk?
I get it when I'm talking. Yeah. I am trying, but it's not letting me. So, okay, I will do my best to, maybe if I just hear.
Yeah, that could be.
Okay, so all that to say, thank you for giving people, extending so much grace to us and to your friends. I think that the issue is when people cross that grace, and it's okay to say, you're sorry, is when we come to you, when we come to each other and apologize, because I think that place of vulnerability, that place of honesty, that place of brokenness to say, I'm sorry, I really messed up. That keeps upping at the same time, the height and depth of friendship. It's the whole breadth of it, where there's grace, and it's the tension of grace and honor. Because honor is, I honor your time. I honor your grace. I honor your love. I honor your support. I honor your sacrifice for me. So it is my duty to be respectful and to say, I'm sorry. You may not need it, but as the receiver of your gift, I would want to say,
because if they didn't say you're sorry, there are people who never say they're sorry. And that is a lack of respect too that I would feel, and I would think, how come they don't care? So I see that part, but I'm not judging, so I let it go too.
It's just an attention. It's not one or the other. It's the whole ball.
I totally get what you mean. Yeah. Well, I just want people to feel comfortable all the time, so I'm always trying to make that happen. But, in a comforting way. But I don't know. There's sometimes when you have to take a seat back. But I like what you said, and I do stand up for myself. There are times when there are people who I just can't be around for whatever reason, or I'm not comfortable with what they're going through, and it doesn't jive with who I am. And I always remember what Maya Angelou said, and that was where she would speak up and say, you know what, that's not allowed in my house. And that I feel like that's okay. If there's somebody saying something that I don't want around me, I speak up for myself. And so, in my home and in my surroundings, I surround myself with the things that I love and that I accept. Not that I'm not accepting of what you're doing, but when we're here, this is a loving place, and so I'll do that. So that's about the only thing that I'll really do if something's so negative that I need to move it away, if it gets just too much into my space. But other than that, I'm pretty much cool.
I often tell people, first we have guidelines. And then we have boundaries, because these are guidelines for friendship. These are guidelines for how you speak to me. These are guidelines for how we interact. And there's grace for crossing those lines. But then when you get too far, if you cross too long or too often or too far, okay, now we have boundaries.
It's like parenting or teaching. You model behavior. I lack a better word, train people how you want to be treated. You're treating them that way. And when it doesn't always work out, then you have to say, look, this doesn't work. But you know what? It's not always that easy. No. So you can control so much
exactly
of who you are and what's going on.
Yes.
But and that does come with wisdom. And boy, you started so young with wisdom and learning, and that's just amazing. And this is it's such an amazing experience getting to know you. So what is your message right now, an overall message? And if you had a chance, just tell the world, what is it that you want them to know?
If they can just read the preface of the book, I would be a happy girl. But what I would say is this, and I'm not trying to be funny or trite, but you are made for more. Never, as Winston Churchill says, who I'm fascinated by these days, I've been doing a lot of reading about Winston Churchill, never, ever, 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 under any circumstance, give up, because your breakthrough is just around the corner. There's something that we need to learn, and what we need to understand is someone else is watching us. And through how we behave, how we deal with a certain situation, we are teaching and leading others. And we just don't know who's watching us. We just don't know. And it's not about us. So I would say you are made for more. And your greatest gift, your greatest reward will be knowing that you are blessing others. Because in the end, you get to see what your life did as a contributing factor for somebody else, that touched somebody else. And you can be a part of that incredible story. Like, what's so wonderful is we may never know about who Billy Graham's mother is. We may never know who Maya Angelou's mentor is. We may never know who spoke into Winston Churchill's life, even though I do know because of what I'm reading. But the world may never know that. But does it matter who gets the credit? That what matters is that we affected change for the better, whether it's definitely in our lives, but whether it's in us or definitely in somebody else, we made a difference. And that life, that world will never be the same again. So Robert F. Kennedy and I wrote that in the preface as well. And I'll just summarize it. Most of us will never have the monumental assignment like a president or a prime minister or Gandhi or Billy Graham will ever have. Most of us will never have that. But together, we can participate in something that can be such a move of culture that we can reform and transform things as we know it and make this place a better home for so many others. So they're made for more. Never give up, and don't worry about who gets the credit.
Yes, thank you. What an inspiring message. And thank you so much, Manna, for being here.
Thank you, Melissa. You're the best. Thank you for all that you do. I honor you. I acknowledge you. And I just send you all my best wishes for everything that you touch. May the work of your hands be blessed and bring you much harvest and fruit. And may everybody that hears your voice, hears your message, just grow to exponential potential.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for being here on Bubbler Media and Be Live. Thank you for being here on Inspiring Adventures and for inspiring me. And I'm going to be sharing this out, and I hope everybody sees it. You're wonderful. Please go and meet Manna Ko. She's got her wonderful page here, Manna for Life on Facebook. You can get her book, Manna Made for More, and learn more about her and her wonderful book and her works, and meet her on A Year in Bloom. She's a member of A Year in Bloom, so we'll be talking a little bit more about that throughout the year. And then I just wanted to let everybody know, let me just switch here. Don't go away though, okay? I'm gonna just put here that my next interview is on Saturday with Bridget Alexander. She's the author of Southern Gothic. She's back for a second time to talk to me about her next book, which is in the Celine Caldwell mystery novel series. And that's going to be on Saturday. And then next week we've got, or coming soon, we've got Alex Swonder and Chris Strubb. So that's going to be a thrill. And if you're interested in my little book, it's this one. This is The Sound of My Soul, which was out a few years ago, but I'm going to be talking about this on A Year in Bloom too. So please join me there and on MsMeliz.com. So thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
One more time here with Manna Ko to say good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you so much. Blessings.
Blessings to you too.